In my last video, you saw me and Nick hike the Grand Canyon rim to rim in a single day. It was a hot, challenging 23.5-mile hike. Since I know that this is a bucket list hike for so many people, like it was for me, I wanted to share some more details from the day, tips and lessons learned. After we finished the hike, we got some delicious Mexican food and checked into a hotel at the South Rim.
My body hurts so bad. I am definitely scared for tomorrow, like when I wake up.
How you feeling?
I'm hurting. It's like, it's just whatever this thing is right outside of my knee here. And my calves are really sore, but I don't feel like worse than I felt last night, actually. I'm just hurting, you know?
So it is the following day. We are still in the hotel and we're gonna get the 1:30 shuttle back to the North Rim today. But while everything is still fresh in my mind, I wanna just do a full recap of the day and share some tips and some things that we learned from actually doing this trip. And then I have all my gear here and I want to talk about some specific pieces of gear and things, that we just learned from the day. Let's go back to the beginning. So we started at 5 a.m. I knew that section of the hike was going to be really beautiful, and so I didn't want to hike it in the dark and kind of miss a lot of that part of the hike. So we waited until we could barely see it. And then we hiked down, and very quickly, I would say, the downhill, I was over it. I am already sick of the downhill. It's been like, I don't know, an hour and a half. Do not underestimate downhill. Like, I knew going into it that was actually probably gonna be one of the more taxing parts of the day because of the impact on your knees and your feet as you're just like constantly stepping down. And most trails, you're not like hiking downhill for 10 miles like at one time. So it really does impact you. Just like I felt really, really tired after that. I do want to highlight the trekking poles. You know, I love my trekking poles, but on this hike in particular, I do not know how people are doing this without trekking poles. And when we were going downhill, I really made a conscious effort to like not just step down and like slam onto my foot. I was really trying to utilize the trekking poles to gently drop my foot down as I was kind of stepping down things, making sure I was putting my foot on nice even surfaces and just kind of trying to protect my feet and my knees as much as I could because I knew it was going to be such a long day. So the trekking poles helped so much with that downhill. But honestly, I was still so exhausted. Actually, also, I did fall like literally the first 10 minutes into the hike. I fell. I don't know if you can see, I have a little bruise here on my knee, but yeah, the first 10 minutes just twisted my ankle. My ankle is totally fine. I was not injured at all. The trekking poles kind of helped me fall very gracefully, I would say, but it was just kind of funny. I was like, come on, first 10 minutes of a 23.5-mile day and I am on the ground. So that wasn't great. So pretty much right after we finished the steeper part of the downhill, it was a very, very gradual downhill through very like sunny terrain. And at that point, the sun was on us and it was starting to get really, really hot. We reached a point called Phantom Ranch, and this is more than halfway. So that was kind of like one of our rest points. We took a really solid rest there and then we continued on. And after Phantom Ranch is where things got really intense. Right after that breaking point, you hit the Colorado River. And that was so cool and exciting to see just because, you know, that's sort of the lowest point of the day. And then you cross this really cool pedestrian bridge that you can see through the bottom. And it was just a really cool moment. When we crossed over to the other side, it was so hot. So we're at the lowest point at the hottest part of the day. It was just like starting to also go uphill, because at that point we basically had roughly 8 miles left, I think, and pretty much all of the elevation gain to get back up to the south rim. So things were just beginning to get kind of intense, and that heat was unrelenting. Like, I cannot overstate the heat. And so we started climbing up this section of the trail called the Devil's Corkscrew, which I think is very appropriately named. And it's just like steep switchbacks, and we were just full sun, so hot. And that was one of the most challenging parts of the day for me, I would say, is getting up that section. And then we kind of reached a bit of a plateau where there was a campground and another rest area and some shade. But at that point, after hiking a lot of uphill in the full heat of the day, so much sun exposure, we got to that rest area and I was feeling like pretty tired. So we laid on some of the benches, but overall I felt pretty good. I just was tired, and I knew we had so much challenge ahead of us. So we had 4.5 miles left and 4,800 feet of elevation gain. We are on the last 4 miles, and basically we go up there. It's kind of wild, like being there and knowing that that's your way forward. There's no going back, right? Like, you have to tackle that challenge. And so I just made sure, again, to like really take care of myself throughout the day. I made sure I was super self-aware and proactive about hydrating and eating and taking care of anything that didn't feel right. On the time we got there, I was tired, but I was feeling good. And I actually tackled that first 1.5 miles up like feeling really good. I actually passed a park ranger and she was like, "Oh, you're looking strong." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm feeling good." There's a couple little like rest areas along that climb. There's like 3 Mile House and then 1.5 miles. And so these are really nice because it kind of gives you something mentally to break up that challenge of that last few miles of the hike. So, my goal was to go from that campground to the 3 Mile House, and then from there to the 1.5, and then from there to the top. We took a rest at the 3 Mile House, and then we pretty much pushed through all the way to the top. We didn't stop after that. And the uphill, honestly, it was tough, but it wasn't like, just one foot in front of the other, just kept a good pace, tried to really focus on my breathing. And then before we knew it, we were at the top, and we just got there, kind of the sun had just set, and so we could still see everything, and it was just such a cool moment. The day was so long and it was so intense that I almost like just couldn't even process what we had just done. And I was so happy to be done. I did not want to hike anymore at that point, but it also just like didn't really hit me what we had just done. And even now, it's just been such a whirlwind since we finished that I'm excited to go back into the park, because we're gonna go there this afternoon and like really look out at the Grand Canyon and just take in what we did. We didn't really have a moment to do that because it got dark, and then we had to get into town and get to our hotel. And I was so proud of myself. There's nothing like it. Total, it took us running time almost 15 hours. When I was just kind of calculating our average pace downhill, uphill, and kind of timing things out, I thought it would take us roughly 12 hours. So it definitely took us longer than I was expecting. That was kind of a blessing in a lot of ways. And I think it did take us a little bit longer for a couple reasons. One, when we're filming and we're photographing stuff, it just really takes time. Like all those little stops that we make throughout the day really add up, and they're not really breaks. Like we're not taking our gear off, we're not, sitting down. And so that kind of slowed us down. And then I think just the fact that our backpacks had a little bit more gear than probably the average person. In general, our backpacks were on the heavier side of things, especially Nick's. And so that, I think, over the course of the day really started to just add up and slow down our pace. So overall, I felt good. Like my pack never felt heavy or anything, but I think it just could have been a little bit lighter. But overall, so like I said, it was kind of a blessing to have us take a little bit longer. That last 4.5 miles was shaded. And I am so grateful for that, because I think had we attempted that climb in the sun, it would have been a completely different story. That would have made it 10 times as hard. I'm really grateful that we actually got to do that in the shade.
Oh.
So achy. It's
Calves
just,
are sore.
yeah, my calves are really sore, and my hips. This tendon here, and that was, I think, from the downhill, just really killed me. What was your favorite part of the day?
I don't really know. I mean, like you said, it's kind of hard to remember. Like, the light in the morning looked really cool in the downhill, but I don't know. I mean, I kind of liked how the canyon looked at sunset when we were coming up, but that part was, like, so hard and steep that I don't think it was my favorite. Favorite was probably dunking my head in the water, or when you gave me that thing to help my blister, because I felt better.
I think my favorite part, like view-wise and just light-wise, was probably the first, like, couple hours in the morning. Just, it was really cool to hike down and also have the sunrise and see, like, the changing light in the canyon. And we were still pretty fresh and excited at that point. And then I really liked the section after we got up the Devil's Corkscrew, where we got to that plateau. And it was like very lush and green. There was a stream there, and it was just kind of this oasis after climbing what felt like inside of a furnace or a fire.
I think, I mean, towards the end, I was just like, I don't know. I was just struggling. It's hard to say any of that's like my favorite part of the hike, but the views were, they were really cool there. I kind of liked that Devil's Corkscrew thing was cool, because you just gain so much so fast. You can see people like way below you. So it was like a cool part of the hike, and if I had unlimited energy, I'd say like some of those were some of my favorite, because you can see like 1,000 feet below you, and you're just like, you know, over such a short distance. But I was also just so tired that they're definitely not favorites. I was like suffering.
The last few miles was really pretty, especially because we hit it at sunset. So again, like, we had just had that really cool experience of watching the sunset and the changing colors through the canyon. Like, it like turned from orange to like deep red.
I think view-wise, sunset was probably my favorite, because it got cooler and cooler and the shadows get longer, and then even after the sunset, you just get like that blue glow, and there's like a fog, like haziness down in the canyon that was kind of cool.
Really, everything did go pretty smoothly, and then just getting to see the sunrise and the sunset in the canyon in one day was pretty wild. Like, I'll never look at the Grand Canyon the same again. It's totally different for me now. It was such a beautiful trail, and I remarked several times, I was like, this trail is incredibly built, well maintained. There's so many bridges and so much that went into actually building out that trail.
I think one of my favorite parts about it is just looking back, like trying to find where we started. So you can kind of see up the valley that we hiked through for most of the day, and it just looked so far. Like, even having done it, you look at it and you're like, oh, you can't hike over there. Like, you can't walk over there. That's crazy.
Especially in one day.
So it was pretty cool.
What was the hardest part of the day? I already know what you're going to say.
Yeah, the final section was hard, but I actually was happy to be going uphill. After all the downhill. Honestly, I think the hardest part was just the sun and the heat. The sun throughout the whole day drained me so much. I think that's what made me crash on that final section. But then, like, from 3 miles to the finish, which is like the steepest part and the most elevation gain, like, I actually felt pretty okay once I like started to cool off and stuff. I mean, the sun just like drained me so much. I felt like I was drinking a lot of water, but I still don't think it was enough. And I think that kind of like ruined me for the later sections until I could like actually cool off and recover.
For me, hands down, it was the heat. So I think an easier time with the uphill than Nick. Nick had like a tough mile and a half.
Yeah, I like crashed.
He like crashed, and then he kind of like recovered and was fine. But the uphill for me was really not that bad. Like, I was tired and ready to be done for sure, but you know, I wasn't like miserable on that uphill. It was just that the heat in the middle of the day as we were climbing up there made everything so much harder. Keep in mind that we did this mid-May. I feel like this is kind of the earliest you could do it, because the North Rim opened on the 15th and we did the hike on the 17th. I cannot imagine people doing this into the summer. I think temperatures down there in the bottom reach like over
It was
130.
definitely over 100. According to my watch, I think it was like 10. I think the highest I saw was 105.
Yeah, but like my point is, it gets even hotter down there throughout the summer. Do not underestimate the heat. For us, like since we hike a lot, the elevation was something I really could wrap my head around. Like I've done hard hikes with a lot of elevation gain, but it was really the heat. And then I would say the second one for me was just the consistent downhill for so many miles without any break. Really just affects your it just hurts in a different way.
Even on the uphill, there were like tiny little 100-yard stretches of downhill that I hated.
Yeah,
like everything started to hurt again.
Yeah.
But then going uphill, like I was saying, it wasn't like leg soreness that was stopping me. It was just like full body exhaustion. My tank was just empty. I think it was a lot of my breathing too. Focused on like really deep breaths after the 3 mile, and I think it just kind of kept things moving and kept me a little more alert, and I was able to like power through the final end.
Overall, I'm so pumped that we did it. Like it is the coolest thing, but I don't want to do it again anytime soon, at least.
It was good.
So now I want to talk a little bit about some of the gear and some specific tips and things that I learned from doing this. So this is the pack that I use. This is the Gregory Jade 38. I love this backpack. It's relatively new for me. I got it this year because I wanted a day hiking bag that had just a little bit more space in it. And this one is super comfortable. Has really wide hip belts, which is crucial for me. I had no issues with my bag or feeling like my backpack was heavy or uncomfortable. So that's the one that I'm currently using. And I actually will link to the stuff that we're talking about in the description below as well. So if you want to catch any of that. But I want to talk about my clothing because there was one, not even like a mistake, but just this is what I've learned. So I started the hike with this shirt. Love this shirt, it's super comfy. And last minute when I was packing, I threw this shirt in my bag. Now this shirt is the Patagonia Capling Cool shirt I've talked about before because I love it. It has UPF 50 protection and it's designed to kind of keep you cool. So I was like, ooh, maybe I'll want this. And I threw this in my pack. I wish that I had just worn this from the start. Why do I have 2 of these, right? Like, get rid of that one. I should have just worn this from the start. I put this on, and when we got to the Phantom Ranch break, this saved me. As I talked about, the hardest part of the day for me was just the heat. So I brought sunscreen, and I was trying to reapply sunscreen. One, that is just hard to do when you're like moving all day and you're sweating all day. You need to reapply this constantly. I hate putting sunscreen on. I was so sweaty. I was covered in dirt and sand, and then trying to like cake on this like sticky, greasy sunscreen all over me every 40 minutes was just, I was getting so frustrated with it. So luckily I put this on, and then the rest of the day I didn't have to worry at all about sun on my arms or anything. And it even has a hood. And so I put this up, protected my neck, protected my ears. And the absolute best part is I got this wet, and that made the heat somewhat bearable. I was like, could not stop thinking about how grateful I was that this shirt was with me and that I was able to get it wet in some of the nearby streams and stuff that we were hiking by. And then once it was wet, it really cooled my body down. And there was like a little bit of breeze throughout the day, and it would kind of cool the shirt, and it just felt like heaven. And we would stop to try to get our shirts wet, frequently as we were hiking by, and it's incredible how quickly they would dry out. In addition to that, I also had this little buff that I was also getting wet. It's actually still a little bit damp. And then wearing this around my neck. And then as we'd hike, the front of it would kind of cool down, and I'd rotate it, and then it would put just nice cool like stuff on my neck back here. So these things really saved me, and I would highly recommend like really think through how you're going to manage that heat, because it is unbelievably intense. I also had a hat and then my sunglasses as well. That's kind of how I protected myself. And yeah, like I said, I just wish that I had worn this from the get-go. For my shorts, I'm currently wearing them. They're just basically moisture wicking shorts. I think I got them at TJ Maxx. They have the underwear built into them, and that's what I prefer. I find that so much more comfortable just to have one short that kind of has everything together. So that's what I wore. And then I actually washed them in the hotel sink last night, and so I could wear them again today for like the journey and the shuttle back. For shoes and socks, I have these Smart Wool moisture wicking wool socks. These were really comfortable, and I wore those with these Vivo Barefoot hiking shoe. This is a really lightweight, breathable hiking shoe. I'm not going to go into like the whole barefoot thing, but overall I really liked them. I felt like my foot was able to breathe and they were really comfortable. But on the time we hit the end of that downhill, my feet were just kind of swollen a bit, and just my toes kind of hurt just from the constant downhill. So overall, I didn't have any blisters actually, which is incredible. I have no blisters, no chafing, like no issues, but I did take these off and I wore these for the rest of the day for basically all of the uphill. These are my Bedrock sandals. I basically live in these in the warmer months, and I've hiked in these many times, and it just felt so nice to be able to get my feet out of my hiking shoe, out of like the sweatiness of that, and just let them be free. And then when we got to creeks and streams and stuff, I could just put my feet in there and just helped cool my entire body down. And so that's, you know, for me, just a bit of a disclaimer here, this more barefoot thing is something that it takes your body and your feet time to build up, to have the strength to use these barefoot type shoes. So this is something that I've just been using for years, and it's really comfortable. My feet were totally fine. Like it's pretty incredible actually. After that entire day, I don't have any issues with my feet. So that's just how I did it, but that might not be like the best system for you. And yeah, it is some extra weight that I had to carry because I brought these sandals and then I had to carry the shoes, but that did not bother me at all, because if stuff starts to go wrong with your feet, you're kind of screwed, because you need your feet. And on such a long hike like that, I wanted to ensure that my feet were going to be comfortable and that my feet were going to be able to handle that hike. And so having those options was, I knew, the best way for me. And I'm happy with that decision, and I do not regret that at all. All right, so the last thing that I want to talk about with gear is just water. I had my water bladder. This was in my backpack, and I was able to just easily sip through this throughout the day, and that's kind of my just like primary water source. I also packed this collapsible, well, it's full of water now, but it collapses. I like to do this because I can put water in here and put my electrolyte drink in here and then sip on this. And then my whole water bladder isn't full of electrolytes, and it's just easier to clean this if I just keep it with just water. So that's what I do here. And every time we would stop to take a break, I'd put some electrolytes in here and I'd just like sip on this water, maybe carry it a little bit while I'm hiking and just finish sipping on this. That was super important, is the electrolytes. I don't know if I have any of the Relights left. I packed a ton of these Relight electrolyte mixes. These are my absolute favorite electrolytes. I literally drink this every single day. I don't use any other brand now. And so I packed a handful of these in a couple different flavors. And pretty much every single time we stopped for a bigger break, I would put one of these packets in here, and Nick and I would sometimes share it, or I would sip on it for the next hour or so and keep my electrolytes up, because hydration is not just water. Like, you need to be replenishing your electrolytes as well to avoid cramps and obviously dehydration. So this was really important, and these are the ones that I absolutely love, and that's sort of how I did it. The last thing I want to talk about is just a headlamp. We did not need our headlamp on the trail. Like I said, we were able to finish it before dark, but there were a lot of people behind us that were gonna be hiking out in the dark. And so you might think like, oh, I'm just on a day hike, carry your headlamp. Headlamp is something I always have in my day hiking backpack, and you never know how long it's gonna take you if you have something that slows you down, and having a headlamp to help you get out is just going to be really important. So it's just something I wanted to note here. That's kind of the big pieces of gear that I wanted to talk about. It's not like every nitty gritty little thing that I carried, but those are some some things that I think are important to think about as you're doing this hike. One other thing that I want to mention is when we started hiking, there were like a bunch of people that were passing us. This seems like a very popular thing for people to trail run. And I immediately got that thought in my head. I was like, oh, we need to move faster. We need to move faster. It like kind of gave me this anxious energy. And then we stopped for a break and Nick and I were talking. He was like, we don't, like, why? Like, why are you thinking about that? And I was like, yeah, you're right. We were keeping the pace that I wanted to keep. So I guess my point here is like, don't get caught up in what other people are doing around you. Other people are going faster. Other people are probably going slower. And there's just no point in comparing yourself to other people on the trail. So I let that go pretty early on. And then I was able to really enjoy things. Of course, you do want to be aware of your pace, and you should, I think, know going into something like this, like what your average pace is typically on a downhill, on a flat, on an uphill. This is not a beginner hike. This is incredibly strenuous. You should have experience, and you should really be able to kind of guesstimate how long something like this is going to take you. And then I would say add a couple hours onto it. Really stay in your own zone and make sure that you're super self-aware and, just like I said, proactive about keeping yourself healthy on the trail. It's super important. It is such a long day and you need to really take care of yourself. If you feel like a blister is forming, stop. Take care of it before it's like a full-on problem. So that is it. I think that's all I can think of for a recap and just like my tips and things that we learned. I hope this was helpful. So our plan now is we are going to catch the 1:30 shuttle back to the North Rim today to like really finish out the trip where we started. We're gonna hit the pool. I'm gonna try to shake out my legs because I am so like just sore and tight. And then 4-hour shuttle does not sound fun. It is so surreal. You can see where we came yesterday, and it's just the weirdest, craziest thing to like look back out there and be like, I walked all of that, and you can see the trail down there and it looks so far away. It's wild. Just like that, we're done. Day and a half later.